welcome back to Future Path. And once again, we are with Krish Shankar. And for those of you who have missed the first part of our conversation, I sincerely urge you, please look up where our first part where Shankar shares his journey, and which is very interesting and exciting as well. So please do catch up on that. Then you'll be able to connect to a lot of the conversation that we are going to do in this part. So with that, Shankar, once again, welcome back to Future Path.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.
Right. Shankar, I want to start with why did you see the need for Catalyze, Power Up Your People Ecosystem, the book that you authored?
Okay. No, I think, if you look at this book, I think I wrote it during the pandemic when there was some free time that I had. The whole idea was, listen, HR is seen. My idea was to bring more contemporary thing to HR to the business, yeah, and also to demythify HR for actual business leaders, saying what is this HR? Why are we doing certain things the way we are doing certain things? So if you look at it, the thing is, the book is not about HR as such, but it says, okay, what are those 10 foundational outcomes every business needs? Yeah. And how will you build it? And maybe one of the outcomes we want is, listen, I want my workforce to be ready with the right skill at the right time. So what is the kind of thing you want to do? Or you say, I want my workforce to be highly kind of productive and being at the best and giving. I just look at it saying, what are the outcomes every business leader would need from their people? And how do you achieve it? So I've identified 10 outcomes. And for each of those, we talk about what are the practices, what have other companies done, what are some examples, and I've got some leaders to come and speak about it. So it is more, I would say, clearly a guide to any business leader on how can they use HR, leverage the power of HR systems. Now, the danger or what has happened is, over time, I think, we spoke about it. HR, the legacy of HR has been administration. Yeah. So payroll administration was the first thing. Then hiring, recruitment. So therefore, the old HR was called personnel and administration. So they were really hiring personnel, time office, attendance, disciplinary procedures, and then so that was administration. So that was what it was. Then I think things moved, because I think, we moved from the factory mindset, and over time, over the last 20 years, it has moved, in a very different way. So, and then we moved through this whole thing about looking at HR. And one of the key things in this whole thing was Dave Ulrich. He came up with this HR Champions, the book, which really spoke about the key role of HR, as a strategic partner, as a change champion, as an employee champion, and as an administrative expert, which really talks about what are the key roles that HR play, which I think opened the perspective of HR, And as industry developed into much more services-oriented industry, the more knowledge workers came in, more kind of thing, then the whole idea of engaging people, culture, training, reskilling, all of that came up. Yeah. Now, at the same time, so therefore the role of HR became very clear about, listen, how am I going to get my people ready for the future? How am I going to get my leadership ready?
That's what you call resource management, right? Looking at them.
So they said HR, human resource management, is how it started coming. Now, as that is going, there is also a growth of technology. Technology came through, and therefore then technology means standard packages will come in, and standard packages will say your process has to change. So therefore, somewhere, while the HR has become there, huge scale is there, technology came. Technology means processes have to be standardized. Then I think what happens, then some part of the role of HR became managing those policies. HR became, so therefore there is one arm of HR is saying, I have to manage policies. I have to do a little bit of compliance. I have to ensure that people are sticking to what it is. And that kind of a role was a little bit of a policing role. Yeah. And therefore, the danger is in some organization, and some people take that much stronger, and that becomes like, that's where HR comes into a bit of what I would call as a cloud. But there are other areas where they say, okay, that's there, but we are moving on to the other parts of it. So when you focus more on the larger empowering part, the development part, the culture change part, the role that HR can play in driving business growth, then you become a clearly business partner. So yeah, that's how HR has changed. And so I think various influences, people's expectations are changing, from the old factory mindset to a much more now an employee saying, and in the future he'll say, listen, I'm a professional, I can work for different companies, as they normally now call as a gig employee. So therefore I can do 2 or 3 different jobs. I don't want to be with the company anymore, and once they get certain kind of skill, they may think like that. So how do you really, the world of employees will also change. What we can do with business is also change. So I think
And also with the hybrid work, do you think will it change further on, or the same concepts will hold?
I think, well, the hype was there post-COVID about hybrid going there. I think people have also seen the downside, the lack of connect, lack of really teams coming together, and the lack of really, there was a sense of feeling that, listen, we are not sure whether we are building the culture that we want if they're completely remote. So that's why over time, companies have insisted that people should come for at least 2-3 days so that they meet together. They ensure there are certain things that can be better done in a physical thing. So I think, but people still want that flexibility. They have seen that and they love that flexibility. So I think in most cases, people will at least take 1 or 2 days work from home in a week.
So that's where this hybrid is here to stay, right? It's not
in some organizations. I don't see that in pharma. I don't see that in manufacturing, where I think they are much more there. But yes, technology clearly will be a little bit more hybrid. At least 1 or 2 days work from home. They will say that's part of their value proposition now. So they'll look for it.
All right. Yeah. One more thing I wanted to ask about it. One thing is to the audience before we move on, that to the audience and the listeners, that this book link is available right below this podcast. So go for it, and you can look up a good number of senior HR professionals are recommending it, because obviously they're finding it very handy and useful for their own business operation. So it's filled with insights like Shankar just mentioned from the conversations that he's had brought in from the people that leaders to come and share and talk. So it makes an interesting read, and also more of a close to being a handbook, if you will, right? Is it fair to call
if
that?
People want to know, this is the book. It's called Catalyze, Power of Your People Ecosystem. So actually, it's a very, very much about how do you, get the outcomes that you want to make your business successful. Outcomes to do with people. So I focus on 10 core outcomes, simple things like how do I build a culture that is relevant for my business? How do I build the right leadership for the business? How do I get the right set of leaders ready for the company? How do I build a more inclusive culture so it's got those things. So it's got about 10 key things that any person would like. So it doesn't have HR speak. It is very practical, I think. Yeah.
So please look up. The link is right below this podcast, and we'll continue with Shankar. So Shankar, I just want to go back to some base level conversations. How do you see that you worked typically in the two eras of the HR, from a personal to HR, right? So are there marked differences, though functionally same? I mean, of course, leaving out the administrative parts of it, right? Uh, do you see what were the marked differences in the approach apart from just the title of it?
So as I said, Nanju, I think the expectations out of HR in the new world of business has changed. So therefore, I would say that in the past, businesses were little more slow to change. It was a much more of a well-articulated environment. There was not much of talent mobility, it was all there. So therefore, it is a little bit more structured, more safe, more steady environment. And I think HR had a role which is a lot more about, hiring people, doing the administration, taking care of problems, that was, and some basic training. That's what it was. I think the world is changing. The world of business has become more dynamic. The kind of people that are coming into the workforce is changing. There's huge amount of talent mobility. People's expectations are changing. If you were to just look at those 3 or 4 things, people are now saying from when I joined the organization, we said, listen, maybe we'll work here for 15, 20 years, and grow and hopefully become some senior manager kind of a thing. But now people are saying, listen, they look at short horizons, 3 to 5 years, and if they do well, they may continue. But they may say, listen, I want to do something else after this. So shorter career horizons are there. The skill kind of half-life of skills are also changing. What kind of skills you have, if you continue with the same, maybe in 10, 15 years, you will be obsolete. So you have to also be relevant what it is. So I think because the world of change is much faster, businesses are more dynamic, the need what HR can do has also increased in a very big way. And therefore, that is how it is become more relevant now. I think the role now it plays is a very clear partner saying, okay, if this is the future growth of the business, what kind of people do I need? What skills, what capabilities? So it can help plan that. It helps ensure that, okay, if that is so, what is the right culture I need to retain the right people and to help them grow? So it also brings in, HR is one which is a function which really has to mirror what the outside world is also thinking. So I think you got to, it has to, like, let's say marketing, HR also has to keep in mind the view of the current state of what people want also. Yeah. And therefore, these two functions have to really be in tune with what's happening, in tune with what the world is. And that's why I think HR has become a little bit, it has changed. So if you ask me, from the time I joined to now, over these 40 years, I think the expectations out of HR and what the way HR can add value to the business has changed a lot.
But with the sense of relevance, what you mentioned, right? In the process of becoming more relevant, obviously it's become more strategic from a point of working towards success of an organization. But in the course, do you also see that somewhere it has also become a department that tends a sense of fear or some kind of okay, you've got to talk to HR. So, in one sense that you get a meeting request from HR is like, okay, first thing is a sense of insecurity or fear. So, is that the downside of the strategic value proposition?
No, so there are certain downsides. What has happened is, and see, it may not be like this in every organization. I think most organization HRs, tend to will try to be a very approachable, kind of a thing, which really, so that's what it will normally be. But yes, there are instances where HR has to do that policing role. There are instances where HR has to, like, let's say, for example, in a large scale company, I mean, you'll have to have certain rules, and the danger is it's not that you don't want an exception, but that exception then becomes a case somewhere else and it'll have a ripple effect all across. So that's what people are more worried about. They wouldn't mind one person to have an exception and do something, but then that becomes the impact it'll have on the other parts of the organization is where people are a little bit worried. And therefore, HR tends to ensure that, listen, we've got to let people follow certain policies. And if they do that too rigorously, then it becomes more of a policing organization. So you got to in HR have that balance about how do you manage that. Sometimes, when you're saying calls from HR, people get worried. Normally, no, unless most of the thing, for example, if somebody's had poor performance, the manager is supposed to talk. HR is not, ideally, HR should not be involved in it. HR is just creating the framework for people to do the work. And if people are doing that work, then HR will have to be, it's like government. If people are doing their work, leaders are doing the work, HR will not do this. HR will be at the background. in great companies, HR, but where there is an issue that, listen, that the teams that are supposed to do the right work are not doing, then HR is seen more there. HR is, so that is a balance. If the leadership and the managers understand the principles, it's aligned with what HR and others are thinking together. And then I think the presence of HR will be less in the way that you talk about. So yeah, so I think scale of the organization, the ability to ensure that policies are managed, the technology which also created certain kind of certain processes, etc. All these have come together. I think most companies are trying to manage it, saying, listen, while we know we've got to manage and keep some compliance to policies, but there are other areas we've got to work on, develop, etc., etc. But I think that's where it needs the leadership, managers, HR, all of them to be aligned. If they're aligned with what it is, then I think these things will work well. If they are not aligned, or if the processes are too rigorous or too this, then you will have this thing that you're talking about. HR is seen as a much more of an enforcer than it should be.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's looked at perceived more as a compliance enforcement agency than an engagement agency, right? Where engagement is a smaller department, but primarily an enforcing agency.
Yeah. So see, even engagement is not the role of HR. I would say engagement is also the role of the leaders, the business leaders, managers. It is their role. HR is supposed to facilitate them. HR is supposed to coach them to do it. Yeah. So the idea is that the most of the work of HR is through managers. HR is creating a framework, creating the processes so that managers do all the work. And the HR people who are there are supposed to help them, coach them, enable them to do that work, to manage their teams. And that's what the role should be. And therefore, it's important that HR puts the right processes which are accepted.
But why do you think HR as a function, department attracts the stage of becoming butt of most corporate jokes, right? On HR, why is that happening? Where do you think that?
I think, see, the point is where it becomes a stronger enforcer, because in the end, what are people looking for in a company? They're looking for increased compensation, increased promotion, and when you're talking of jokes, they would make jokes around it, saying, "Listen, this was not approved," or this or that. I think, to my earlier point, if the processes and things are clear and transparent, and if the managers or the people who are running the thing are completely aligned with it and they take ownership to it, then you will not hear these things. Then I think it's all aligned. The leadership, the managers, the HR process are all aligned. Then I think, people will run it and HR will be at the background. Where these are not that aligned, where there is a little bit of a thing, then you will hear these kind of roles where the role of HR is becoming like an enforcer. But
this is more in IT business, right? I mean, was it like this in
I wouldn't say more in IT. In businesses where you have to enforce policies in a much more tighter way. It could be IT, it could be any function where because of the huge scale, because of certain other factors, because of the impact on others, where you want to enforce it in a much more tighter way for various reasons, compliance, this, that, then you would have these kind of things. Yeah.
And you also mentioned that you become the front end for the visibility from outside agency, right? Even HR becomes, somewhere you tend to represent the brand as well as a function and as a department. So, and then you are also saying that within the organization, you should be invisible because it's the business function that has to be done. So how do you, these are, it's too much of an expectation, right? One, you be the front end, a brand visible, a brand ambassador, if you will, for the external world, and at the same time, internally be invisible. Is it expecting too much?
Yeah. So brand ambassador means you're like, for example, how does a company create a brand? Company creates a brand through all its employees, not just HR, but it creates a brand through all its employees. It creates a brand through its various kind of, its value proposition or what it stands for, its purpose, whatever. These are the ones that create a brand. And then HR has to help build this for their employees, in terms of they feel They feel that they can talk about it. They feel they can do it. So that is what it is. It's not HR person. HR person as a brand is there when you're interviewing, when you're meeting somebody face to face. You talk about it. But I think the brand is all employees have to be the kind of the face of the company, in terms some way or the other, because they become a very powerful brand. And thinking about it and putting it together is probably the role of HR. And along with the marketing or communications team, you got to think, saying what is that we want to communicate to the external world in terms
Are
of.
these things discussed in the classrooms when they're teaching HR? Because you said you also like to teach. In the MBA HR, are these talked about it in these respects? Is this approach
I think that.
employed?
So again, I don't want to. While they do it, while they taught, because I saw I had a XLRI did they had a course called Marketing for HR, and they wanted me to take one small session on employer branding and the EVP. So yeah, they teach about it. But see, the point is, I don't think in the colleges or in management schools it's a little bit more theoretical. I don't think they look at it in much more of a great understanding at the various issues. Yeah, it's not. Maybe in the executive education program they do it, but at the management schools, maybe it is at in infancy in saying what is it about, what are you doing. So they do a little bit about that, I think.
Well, you mentioned your campus. See, in the B schools, campus alignment is strong, at least as a student, and sometimes when it gets down to alumni association. But what my personal observation has been, in particularly in the HR community, there is a very distinct loyalty groups for XLRI and TIS, and there seems to be some kind of a uh, uh, even a friction, if I can say that, in a not in a aggressive way, but maybe preferences. If so, maybe if I can quote somebody, maybe I'll not take names, but people have said, okay, if you're a test, don't even think about applying to this organization. It's an XLRI organization,
Oh my God.
right? So, have you? What's your experience?
Frankly, Nanju, I have not heard this, and nor have I seen this at all. Because see, if I were to look at the companies that I've worked with let's say in levers, there are lots of TIS, HLLP, XLRI people, and they're all in different big positions. Airtel similarly. In Infosys, I don't think there's any. I've not seen this across, because I think at the end, once you join an organization, once you're looking for the right people, I don't think there are these strong things. I don't know. I mean, but personally, I've not experienced this. These may be, again, these are is it there? I don't know, but I don't think so. I don't think so. I think people are mature enough. In the end, I don't think people want to create cliques or something. I don't think that. From wherever I've seen, people are open to the right talent. And I think it's not only XLR and TIS. I mean, if you look at it, the HR people are from many organizations. I mean,
Correct.
XLRI produces 180 people, TIS produces 60, 70 people a year. So it's a small group. But you look at HR, there are many good many good institutes that are there. Yeah. And I think I think you've seen that, Symbiosis, most of the management schools have some HR. Even IIMs produce people with HR thing now, MDI. So there are quite a lot. So I see HR as now that it's an XLRI. We're there from the beginning, but I think now I see a large group of HR people coming up across many things. I think some excellent people come from the School of Social Work, Madras School of Social Work, the Mumbai School of Social Work, and they produce some phenomenal HR leaders. There's an institute in Calcutta called
In the
IIS.
past, right? In the past, in
Even
fact,
now,
they
even
held
now,
even now.
even now, yeah. So I think a lot of great. So I don't see that this XLRI is any kind of. I've not seen it personally, but even then, I think the world of HR is now much larger than what it was. Now I think it's the talent pool is phenomenal now.
But how relevant do you think this will be with AI coming in, and the amount of technologies today, every business is driven by technology. It's no longer an IT business is tech driven. Now, pretty much every business is tech driven.
Yeah. No, I
So,
think
how do you see this?
if we look at AI the right way, then I think we can rethink the way HR is run. For example, all I would say is every manager will have an AI HR partner, an HR partner through AI, which is helping him or her with everything to do with people. Yeah. So therefore, instead of the current business partners, you have a AI
Yeah,
base.
so systems will become that, right? So where is so HR will become a small strategic department who will define or who will work with the algorithm to in turn define the
No, not yeah.
organization
So,
culture or
so,
tune it
so
and
there are
things
two,
like
three parts there, Manju. One, I think is I'm saying every manager. See, the core role of HR is delivered by the manager. If you support the manager through something, to help him or her to do it, then I think HR can be there. Then, what is the role of HR? I think the HR role is really three or four things. One is really saying, okay, if I want to grow talent for the future, what kind of talent do I need and how do I develop them? So you got to really look at it and say, okay, this is where the business is going. And if this is where the business is going, this is where the kind of talent we need, and this is how we have to develop them for the future. So I think doing that and building the right things there is going to be the first one. The second part is if we look at talking about culture, and as I said, culture clearly is there are two parts to it. What are the behaviors needed for your business to be successful? So I think you look at it and say, yeah. For example, you say, listen, now I'm a consulting kind of take an IT services company with lots of AI, etc. It's not so much code, but I have to bring much more a consulting mindset. And therefore, understanding business, having empathy, design thinking, these become important. Now, if those become important, then I think those are the kind of behaviors we should, as a company, start valuing it. Then there is the other part, which is the human values, saying what are the human values that are necessary for you to, in line with your core values, which are needed for the business to attract and retain talent, which will be all about great collaboration, great environment to work with people, respect, integrity, and all of that. So once you define that culture, HR's role is to see how do you kind of get people to build that culture. And that will be built through having the right leaders, getting them aligned to what it is. Also ensuring that your processes of promotion, identifying people for positions, keep that into account. And then right reward and recognition, communication, and putting the right rituals. So that will help you build that culture. So that's where the HR will have to do that. You also have to say, listen, am I creating having the right kind of workforce, and in a way, part of the culture is an inclusive culture to get a diverse workforce, and how do I build it? So because you have to think 5 years future, saying how the thing is and what we need to do to really build that. So that will be the role that HR will have to play. And I think coaching leaders and managers all across, because as I said, HR can think about it, can create the frameworks and the systems, but the work has to be done along with the business. So I think HR has to be embedded with the business and work together with it. So while AI will be there, it will help. I see AI helping each individual manager take the right decisions at the right time. The role of HR will become much more stronger in some of these other things. So yeah.
just to get some number understanding. What was the HR organization size in Infosys? Uh, that is your last large role, number of people in HR.
Don't remember now. I'm not sure how much of
Approximately.
it.
No,
so, so these are all, I don't know. See, I think
I think,
depends.
okay, let me rephrase it. I think there was a point of time, what I remember, people used to talk about one HR per X number of resources in an organization. That there was a conversation like that some years ago.
Yeah.
Was that still relevant?
So see, that is a
Approach was same.
benchmark. That is a kind of a benchmark people use. Yeah, saying, listen, what is the role, how many HR per employee, and that was a kind
Right.
of benchmark.
So
Or
that
how
is
many
one
HR business
concept which is
partners to.
going to be out of the window first, right? With AI, that very thinking itself is going to go fly out.
That is right. See, not only AI, I think the new models that organization had using the shared services model, and when they add the shared services model, a lot of HR support used to be done through the shared service. So technology, all of that came in. And one HR is to think in the past when I started, it was like 1:80. That is the kind of HR
Okay.
to employees we had, which is now moved to 1:300, 400, etc., etc. And HR partners to employees is even 1:600 in some cases. So things have moved from
Okay.
there. So with AI coming in, that you're right. I believe each manager can have a good HR partner as an
And
AI,
it's going to be far more effective also, right?
as long as we design it in the right way. I
Right.
don't know.
Correct. Correct. I mean, that
The
department will
right
have to be a lot stronger.
considerations. Yeah. It can be there, and it'll evolve. And HR can play a more defining role in how they build and processes and systems to take the organization for the future. Yeah. So I think that's relevant. I've seen it change from 1:80 in those days. Now I think it's moved to 1:300, 1:500. So it depends. It may vary
So,
from industry also. A very high touch industry like, let's say, FMCG, may need a little HR, where a large kind of, BPO type of thing may need lesser. So I think it would vary.
given so many schools, uh, uh, offering HR, uh, so this is going to be a challenge, right? In a future scale, future jobs. So this is definitely going to be one of the most competitive space. One, because the person who comes in or gets in will have to be lot more strategic in thinking. So and also it will not be a tool knowledge, because pretty much anybody can learn to use a tool in a fastest possible time. Uh, so so this is going to change everything in the way it is done today, right? So in this context, you also
While
brought in.
Sorry, this may also apply to other functions also, Manju. I think all other
That is true. That
functions.
is true. Yes, sir.
Similarly, I think people have to become more strategic when they start, doing leaders, because, that's where they can really add value. Yeah, I think this is going to be a big change as I look into the future.
Right. So, just wanted to bring back one of the things you had mentioned in our first conversation earlier. You said now which is moving towards people calling themselves chief people officer, right? Director personal to uh, chief HR, CHRO to chief people officer. So, in this context, where do you see this if you're a chief people officer and with the AI coming in? So there is still HR, there is now a CPO, and then now with the AI, what will be the new avatar in your?
No, see, I think the idea that is there is just a thought coming saying human resources, people are not a resource, and therefore there are the group of organizations which are saying, I want to call them as chief people officer or chief of people and culture. I think that's the kind of name. Yeah, so I think they try and bring various things, and I think Google went to, as some time back, calling people operations. So they said head people operations or something like that. They called for thing. So I think they tried different times, but I think the thing is, I think there is. I don't think names make a difference. While it may have an impact on mindset, all they are saying is, listen, we don't want to treat people as resources. We want to treat people in their entirety.
But as long as you're looking at the time and material,
No,
it is a resource, right?
so it is a resource for certain industries from a time and material
Correct.
view.
It'll
But from the HR perspective, it is not that. You're looking at it also differently. You're looking at saying, okay, what are their aspirations? What are their challenges? What are their mental health challenges? So you're looking at everything and saying how you can build an organization to meet their career growth aspirations, their skill aspirations, the culture and the environment, to manage things like stress, mental health. So you're trying to really think that, listen, it's not just that resource, but there are other things that we got to look around, and that's what I think most HR functions are now doing. Say, for example, take this whole mental health kind of a thing. Many years back it was not that big, but now I think it's become one of the key things that most organizations are driving, thinking, talking But your question, Anju, on what we call as the AI, I think AI will, while it will take care of the operations, etc., and improves efficiency of the operations, it probably will help HR really focus on some of these other things. More on building culture, more on getting the right talent, more on coaching the talent. So those kind of things will be there. So I think whatever you call chief talent officer, chief people officer, chief thing, they'll have to do their jobs of having the right. So what is the core role of HR? I mean, ensure that you have your people be at their best. Yeah, you have your people, you have the right talent in the right jobs who are kind of surpassing the thing, and everybody knows what to do. So those are the kind of things you got to do, and ensuring AI will help you do it. And the role of HR head or CHRO or chief people officer will be to build some of those.
Well, there are already few companies have hired chief AI officer. And it is also logical because today AI is no longer a technology piece. It's something which will be applied in every function, right? Even finance, even in HR. So, so where do you think these guys get hired from? How do you recruit, given this thing? Where do you recruit such people now?
So I
How
think
do you
AI will
approach
speak.
it?
No, see, AI, the way you think of AI has got many things. Somebody you need who can understand how AI can make an impact in your organization. So you need
Correct.
somebody who's got a kind of a strategic vision of how AI can be implemented. You don't need somebody who knows the technology of AI, but somebody who's going to take AI and implement it in your organization. So somebody who understands the needs, prioritization, how to take AI, and also manage
Correct.
the ethics and the integrity and the quality involved in it. So you need,
Correct.
and somebody who can get various teams together, because you also, AI implementation is not just that, but you got to do that. So yeah, where do you get these people? I think people who have done such large scale implementation, large scale consulting, with who understand AI and how AI, technology knowledge. I think those are the kind of,
Which
so
is
maybe
not
some,
there enough, right? Obviously,
not there
such
enough,
people are not.
not there.
So
So you have to,
potentially, some HR leader can also throw in their hat.
HR
A
leader who
delivery
understands AI.
delivery leader can throw in their hat.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Delivery leaders, HR leaders, IT leaders who got this. Any business leader who's run
Business
large
leader could.
transformation and change, who wants to understand the thing. But yes, they all have to understand the technology of AI, how AI can be integrated, etc. So yeah, and maybe it's a cross-functional team. Maybe you have a group of 2 or 3 people. You may not have one person who can do, but with one leader,
So
he or she
it may
has to get
become
a
a
team
AI
together.
office rather than a.
Yeah, AI team, which probably will probably try and do it till the capabilities are built, I would say.
Right. Well, UAE also has a AI minister. So it's the first in the world. So I'm just curious whether India will ever think of having. I mean, when India will. I mean, I guess it may become a.
Yeah, see, AI will have a big role in Indian government. I mean, if the government operations with AI can help speed up a lot of things for everybody. Day-to-day processing, so many things are there. I think, yeah, over time, because probably providing services to citizens, it's largest, everything right from. So AI can definitely play a big role there in
Well,
improving.
one more thing, Shankar. In China, nearly 8 years ago, 8 years ago, I think, a Chinese gaming company, they have a CEO on a rotation. So they had a AI as a CEO. So now, you as a HR leader, when do you think a company like Infosys will have a AI CEO?
I don't think so.
You don't think so at all?
I don't think so. No,
It
no, no.
never will.
I think. See, those are all. See, I think the AI can help the CEO, but you need a CEO because you got to get the teams together. So I don't think AI as a CEO, AI as a CEO is not going to work in large companies. I mean, AI can support, be a tool, but I don't think it can replace a CEO.
Any of the
I may
CXOs?
be wrong, but I think so.
Yeah. So which leadership role would you replace with AI?
Well, I think it's a good one. I think a lot of role which is to do with putting a lot of data analysis, decision making, um, uh, following rules. Yeah, I think AI can do
Okay,
that.
now for a moment, you just step back into your CHRO role. So, and you have various functional heads under you, right? The head of component, head of training, and all that. Which of those functions would you replace by AI?
I think, see, the AI can be, if I look at the key things there, we have something called HR operations, which does all
Right.
that. That's an area where AI can take a large part.
So
Component
the head
again.
of operations can be replaced?
No, I don't think a head
I
of
mean,
operations.
who will be the first in your opinion? I mean, among all these functions, which will be the first?
I think those heads and all can't be replaced because they are the ones who decide the strategy they implement. One or two levels below can be replaced, but those heads, I think,
No,
are
I'm just trying to, before we get to the CXO, can we look at
level.
which one? So that is where I'm trying to get to.
No, I personally think the CXO and the level below, I don't think you can replace because those are the ones who
No,
would.
please, Shankar, just play along with me. Just replace one. Who will you replace first? Just for the conversation.
No, I would say let's
Okay,
take
ops.
HR
What is the second one you
operations
want?
followed maybe followed by comp and ben. So those are the ones which are
Highly, I mean, process is already defined. Things are clear, and probably also there's a committee which determines most of these things. So these heads are a participant rather than an independent decision maker in that function, right? You have a component
say that
committee
because
which
they have to come up with newer thinking,
a
some
machine can do
innovation.
it better, right? A machine can
Not
actually,
really.
once the
Not
rules are defined, you can actually. So
Not really. I think
which
not
one would you
really.
replace here?
The machine can implement, I would say, 80% of the jobs, at those
Shankar,
things.
please
There's
indulge me.
still some level where some original thinking, some looking at patterns, something which
No. Among all of them, staffing, training, operations, the component.
staffing is another one, recruitment is another one where AI can play a big role. I think recruitment.
So who would you replace? Which of your first heads would you replace with AI? I mean, just for the
No, as I said,
indulge me for the conversation.
operations, recruitment, and I think component. These are three where AI can play a big role. If you ask me whether I'll
Okay.
replace the top, I may not, but I think
I
level
mean,
below
just for the conversation, one, if you were to
conversation,
replace,
let's
which one
take.
would you take the first?
I think I would say let me go with recruitment.
You would take the recruitment, replace it with the AI first. And for the conversation, of course. So, okay. Okay. No,
Recruitment and HR operations. I think both these. Yeah.
Okay.
Which was the
and
first one? Yeah, maybe HR operations.
HR operations first, second recruitment, and third probably comp and benefits.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. Right. Yeah. I mean, thank you for at least indulging in this conversation because that I thought it's. I think it's also important that actively people are to look at it and start thinking in this line because we are not talking about 20 years from now. We are talking about probably next 3 to 5 years now. So if people have these aspirations, they are the ones who have to probably start looking at it, right? I mean, if you're watching Future Fast, you're listening to Future Fast now, and hearing from somebody who's been in this space, not just as an authority of having written a book, but having been in this function across different sectors. So, so maybe even if you, Shankar is not saying that he would replace, but still, this is a possibility, right? I mean, that is where I'm just trying to say that, okay, uh, uh, we need to keep those possibilities or options open. In that sense, I'm trying to indulge you. I'm not trying to put you to a corner with this
Yeah,
because
I
I'm
agree.
sure probably many of your former colleagues may actually reach out and say, "Are you saying that my role is going to be redundant?" So, one last thing among all the CXO functions, uh, obviously each function is critical, and we also talked about that. Even there will be a chief AI officer coming soon, right? And the HR itself, you talked about HRO, people officer, talent officer, in all those contexts. But which are the three most critical functions across? I mean, sales, marketing, strategy, or if it is a manufacturing or operation, which three would you put them on top three as a HR leader? Because you obviously have had to work with every
So which
department and
function will
function.
you put as a top three? I didn't get your
Yeah,
question.
yeah. Which function, which three CXOs would you consider first, most important three roles in an organization?
Uh, which function is most? No, see,
I mean, I agree that all are important, but
no. What I'm saying is, it's a very, it's again, it's a question where if they're not needed, they won't be CXOs because they are needed there. Yeah, but I think if you were to really stretch and say, listen, what if I can outsource some of it? What if I don't need some of that? Where I can, what I can get some consulting for it, somebody, and what is the one what is the core? Then I think, see, manufacturing can be completely outsourced. You can say, listen, yeah, somebody else is going to make it for me. All I need is, if I'm going to, and it again, depending on what you're thinking of your
you can be an
organization.
outsourced CHRO, right, or outsourced CPO
You
also,
could have
because
something. You could have that.
yes,
I mean, it depends. You can just be a PE fund which is God saying, listen, I'm going to just appoint my key leaders, and I'm going to do that. So you can just be, what someone like a Warren Buffett can do. You can just be a person who's taking those decisions. So it depends on what it is, and I think it's a more strategic call about what the organization, which function, where you can add value. I think depending on the choices you make, any of those functions can be outsourced or any of the functions can be given out. But if you choose saying, listen, I'm going to be a company which is going to provide services, let's say, or I'm going to be design and development of a product, then I think you need your design, which is R&D and product development and marketing as a core part, and you can keep the others there. If you say, no, I'm going to be a company which is going to be in professional services, then I think you need your talent as well as your, delivery arm to be part of it. The rest can be outsourced. So I think any of these can be there depending on the strategic choice you can make. Yeah. And I think companies have made different choices. You can end up just being a kind of PE or a venture fund saying, listen, I'm going to really be there in your, and drive and get performance done from certain things as a company. I mean, you can choose that and have everything outsourced. but
right.
but yeah, I think it's a choice. See, HR and finance become like co-partners to running a business as long as you have a large number of things. Yeah. So they are the two arms which help a CEO or a leader to drive the business, to manage talent, to manage it. So everything. So they are like the mirrors that CEO looks at and says what is happening and what I need to do. So that's what it is. And there are these other functions that are driving the business, getting the right thing there. And you can outsource some of them. Some companies will choose to say outsource manage. Look at Apple. I mean, all of manufacturing is outsourced.
Right.
I mean, for a $1 trillion whatever company, they don't manufacture. They a lot of so that's but while they design, I mean, their product engineering design is there. Complete manufacturing is outsourced. So it's a choice that they have made.
Well, I I want to. What's your thinking on founders' families getting into management? Because you have worked with founder and organization. I think just around the time there was this argument also, right? I don't know whether it was while you were there or before you joined in, about Narayan Murthy making a comment about regretting it was not to involve their families in the business, right? I think it was supposed to be one of his initial philosophies that he insisted that the whole founding team should follow. And he himself came out and said that he regrets that decision. Was it while you were there or before?
No. It's probably after that. But see, this is a matter of choice. I've seen work in both the situations, so I don't think I have any view on this. I mean, I've seen founder families being in the business. I mean, there are examples, and I've also seen where founders have kept the families out. So both are working. So I don't think I have any view on this, Ranju.
Uh, how does the organization you, because I think uh, uh, as a head of people function, how do I mean, you're part of the executive team leadership. How do they perceive it? I mean, from your observation, maybe personally you
No, I
said
think,
you
see,
don't
it's
have view,
all,
but how was that perception?
while there is various things, I think firstly it is the capability of anybody who's in the organization. As long as they see the person is capable, then I think that's all. So I think clearly on the merits of the person, the way the thing, and then people see, because you know founders who have a large stake in the company would like to ensure that uh, there are people there, succession is there, so that all that is there. So I don't see people have any negative. As long as the capabilities of people are there, I don't see any issue in any of these.
Uh, Now we came back to Infosys. So one last question about Infosys. Uh, so it's it's continuously been outside CEOs, right, or CXOs to some extent in Infosys for last few years. After having nearly 4, 5 of the co-founders being playing the role of CEOs and COOs and all that. So, and also Infosys is known to be one of the first organizations to have created an institution to develop leaders, right, from the IT industry point of view. So, as an ex-Infosian, I don't know, is that a philosophy there? You're once an Infosian, you're always an Infosian, whatever. But how do you see this aspect, and how is the perception in the organization of this?
See, well, I don't think, see, this inside CEO, outside CEO is that strong in the organization, because what happens is Infosys has had a lot of people internally for a long time, and Vishal Sikka was the first outside CEO. At that time, when there was idea that, listen, we have to look at new change, transformation, etc., etc., and then Salil came in. I think and these external CEOs came in for a reason, because yes, there was a feeling that yes, somewhere we can get some external CEOs, and that's what the board felt. I think at that time it was the right call, probably, to get external CEOs as we go there. Now, once I think the point is, firstly, companies take a choice saying, listen, I may have good internal people, but I need some external input because I'm looking at some transformation, some change, and I don't want more of the same. I want something new. That could be one call. Second could be, yes, I may have 2 or 3 internal people, but if I take one, I may upset 3, 4 others who may all be same. So therefore, I want to put all of them together. And I think all companies have done that. I put all of them, I assess all of them in an unbiased way, get somebody to do it, and then take a call. Yeah, so that I look at it in all the factors, and then take a call. Or there may be cases where say, yeah, we got people, but they're not yet ready. I think we got to give them some more time, and therefore let's look at what is there in the. So that's the other thing. Once they take a CEO, I don't think the company is really so then first saying internal CEO, external CEO, etc. As long as the CEO understands the culture and manages it, and I think the effectiveness of CEO is how he or she manages the environment is important, and then I think this internal external is not there. I read a kind of research earlier. I think there are certain jobs where I think um, you know where external knowledge thing is useful, and therefore many companies have done that, getting an external person, and I think that creates some change, and where there's need for transformation. And I've seen Unilever. If you look at Unilever, they've done the same thing. They had an external CEO, Paul Pullman, who came after that. They had an internal CEO. Now they've gone back for an external CEO. So they do that. So I think it's a mix of many things. In the end, people are only looking at how the person is successful. Yeah. And I think rather than saying internal or external will be successful, it is, I think, on the individual. The individual has to be the right person to be successful. Yeah. And as long as he or she understands how to really get teams together, manage, then I think either internal, external can be successful. So I think every organization will try and have a good bench of internal talent. But I think ideally when they make a choice, they also have to look at the external and say, okay, are we getting the best? It is not just that, what is the best? Looking at all the pros and cons, transition, this, that, the likelihood of success, what is needed for thing, and then take a call. So that's what I would say.
As a HR leader, that is one of your primary mandates also, right? For succession planning for each of the leadership functions also. So, in that sense, how do you manage insecurities? Because part of the succession planning is also managing insecurity,
Oh, so
right?
you don't do it overnight. I think these insecurities, you have to say, listen, these are things that this is a process will follow. And where people have seen and they know this is a person clearly going to be the next successor, when that is agreed at the board or the leadership, then you communicate. So I think normally people will say, listen, here are these 2, 3 people. You have a fair chance. I mean, we think of you as potential successors. So you communicate that, develop them. The board makes an assessment, board or whoever the leadership makes an assessment. And over time, when you're sure, then you communicate. So I think you have to ensure that people know that, yeah, here it is, this is what it is. And then this is the reason, or this is the reason where we want to really ensure that there is a objective assessment of looking at it. I think they'll accept that. So I think you have to plan it in a way and communicate the right thing at the right time.
And across different organizations that you work for, in terms of dealing with the leaders uh, at different functions, right, and with the amongst your own peers and all that, where did you what kind of environment you saw is more stressful and also insecure, or where did you find it it was least stressful and more secure?
Well, I think, see, I've found that, see, where there are lots of new people there, where I think there are too many changes that are happening in the leadership, or where I think the company has gone through a couple of bad quarters, or there are, they've had 1 or 2 mistakes. Those places I found the security, or the little bit of uncertainty there. Yeah, where company is doing well, where there's not too much change in leadership, or people are confident that this is a leadership there I've not found that. So I think I would say this is it. I think poor performance of companies certain quarters coupled with too much changes, leadership changes or thing, then that creates a little bit of an insecurity is what I've seen. Can't hear you.
Pretty much in every function then, right?
Yeah. Everywhere.
It can't be one team, one function is doing well and others are struggling. It reflects on every function,
It reflects on every function. I mean, core would be it reflects probably on every function. You're right.
Right. Well, before we close this part of the conversation, I would like you to share some word of advice to people. Two kinds of people I want to ask. One is that in the entrepreneurial community, there are startups. There are two functions they largely ignore from Indian point of view, because I've been associated with startup ecosystem for quite some time now. That one, most of them don't think HR is important to start, right? Because obviously it's a small team and they're like uh, we don't need to be like this. We can make changes on the fly, so we don't need people to be trying to define things and enforce things. So we need it to be flexible. So that is one. And two, particularly Indian startups, majority of them are not very brand and marketing focused, but on this people side. So what would you like to talk to the startup founders about how should they be approaching people function, HR, and how should they be planning it?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. See, you're right. I mean, you may not need HR from the beginning because if you're starting with 3, 4, 5 people, you don't need HR. But I think the founder, I would say, should have the mindset of a CHRO as they build the organization. Because what kind of questions you got to answer is, number one, what is my growth? What are the key capabilities needed to grow and scale up? And for that, what kind of talent I need? Yeah, and defining it in the right way. Where do I get them? So he or she has to think like that. Number two, if I have to be successful, what kind of behaviors are needed in my team to make it successful? What are those behaviors in terms of what people normally talk of culture? What is needed for us to be successful? Yeah, so I think these are the two key questions that the founder should ask. And I think if the founders got the capabilities, the reflective abilities to think through it and do it, yeah, they may not need an HR person in the beginning. But I think the founder needs to approach these questions. So it's not about HR as a department, but it's about that input in making your organization having the right talent for the future, getting the right talent and giving them the right opportunity to succeed and having the right culture. Yeah. So all these three is needed. So therefore, as soon as they start getting a few people and they want to scale, I think it's best for them to have somebody who really helps them think about this longer term. Because HR is a thing. I mean, if you look at people like Mr. Narayana Murthy, I think they have built this with a strong focus on people and talent and thinking about it, and there are all the big founders because that's a big thing that they really look at. So yes, I think founders to grow and scale successfully have to have a very strong uh, talent and culture mindset. I'm not calling a HR thing. And to help them, they probably need somebody who can think along with them in that. And that's where I would say look for a good CHRO to do that. So this is the basic foundation of your company. This is what is going to take your company to the next level. And sometimes mistakes in this can be big mistakes. Hiring the wrong person, could have said I've seen people regret it for quite some time. So I think this is where doing it in a nice, proper, planned way would really help them.
Right. And second segment would be for those people who want to look at a career in HR. And another observation has been find a significant majority of the HR community today are women. And also now it is very common to see that most HR leaders are also women in most of the companies. So for whatever reason, it has become so. I guess probably when you started, much of the personal department were filled with men, right? And also perhaps even so today in manufacturing businesses. But in other businesses, uh, 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 so with that increase in the diversity component and those, what would you want to tell them? What do you want to share? Or what is your word of advice for them and their approach to getting to be the leaders as people leaders, HR leaders, talent leaders, whatever we see going forward?
No, I think, see, HR is, I would say, is a function where, um, and this is something that I keep telling people, when people leave organizations, they don't talk of, this organization did this many billion in revenue, or, we did this growth or this percentage profit. They don't do that. They go and talk about the culture of the company and the leaders they have in this company. They talk about, this is what I work with, this is what it is. If you look at anybody, anybody who's worked in Infosys or Airtel or Unilever, they'll talk about, yeah, these are the people, these are the times, this is the culture. And all of that is what good HR system helps. Yeah, and therefore HR really creates the environment and ensures that it's a much more longer term impact that you can have in the organization. So I would say HR is a great place for people to make a career. You got to have, in the sense that I think the most successful HR people, and you got to be there. And people says, it's number one, you got to have this good insight on people, what makes them tick, what are the things, and some kind of an empathy or an understanding of people. So that I think is important. Number two, and good insight on business in terms of, what are the drivers, and both these are needed to really get the best out of it. You don't have to, and business also simple things, what is it, what are the key drivers, what is going to think, what skills are needed, and only then can you make these two together. So I think if anybody has got both these or is keen to work on both these, then maybe HR is a great place to work. In the future avatar, people using AI, using this, but you are building the foundation for future growth. You're building the right leaders, you're building the right capabilities for future growth. So I would say that this is going to be a very interesting challenge. Lots of change. I think with AI coming, organization structures, I see that in the next 10, 15 years, this whole organization area is going to have a lot of change. So therefore, it will be a very exciting place for any HR professional, I think.
So, any books, podcasts that you like? I think one book, I guess, I can already imagine because you kept talking about him even in our first part of the conversation. So, what do you recommend for our audience and listeners?
Oh, no, I kind of, while there are lots of books and podcasts, I think the basic one I would still go with is, Jim Collins' Good to Great is still a very, very good thing, which I would put there. Some of the very practical applications of HR, I've seen Ram Charan write, who really is a little bit. Some of his books are very clear in terms of the practical applications of HR. I would also recommend that. So yeah, I think those are the things that I would say. And of course, Dave Ulrich has done a lot about it in terms of HR models, but more from a theoretical perspective, But I think it's a good understanding to have. So yeah, I see that HR is one function where I think there's a lot of thinking coming from everywhere. Behavioral economics, this thinking fast and slow has got a lot of impact on how HR. So Danny Kahneman and others, that's one area. It's got a lot of influence from psychology. So one of the podcasts I listen to is a Stanford psychology podcast where they do a lot of research, and I think that's an interesting one. Psychology is one big thing. The whole idea of sociology and what people teams is there. So HR is really where every social science comes together. Yeah, I think if people read, they got to read a little bit broader thing, and I think that will help them in the future. It's a lot about AI ethics, So I think some broader reading will also help them, I think.
Wonderful. Wonderful, Shankar, and also probably add that list to, add catalyze to that list as well. So, and once again, the link is there, and also link to Shankar, and many of you who's worked with him in the last 10, 12 years know him as Krish. So Krish Shankar, link is there to follow what work keeps him busy and what he's doing now, and also to the link to the book. And there may be a book coming out soon, so keep following on that as well. So once again, thank you, and please do share this conversation with all those people you think will appreciate it. And if you have not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing to Future Fast. Once again, Shankar, thank you so much for the time and sharing all this.
Thank you, Nanju. All the best.